Going to go through InnerAlly, a little mock-up that I have here to show you some of the functionality that is available in this application. So here's a little splash screen. One of the things we wanted to convey was that this program was a friendly program with a kind of friend in your pocket model of being able to help you in times of need. And so we have at least the beginning thoughts of a little mascot here. There are a couple ways that you enter the InnerAlly program. One is through this daily touchstone screen here. And so basically this is like a daily check-in. And here you would have a chance to kind of rate your mood and also your level of self-compassion. And then check in one of these four statuses. Either you're on track and doing well, you're on track and struggling, you're off track, or you're getting back on track. And so we left this general so that if you're not going for 100% sobriety, you could still use this tool and have it be relevant to you. So typically for the daily check-in, you'll get like a little push alarm that you can set at whatever time of day you want it to come in with just a tone, and then it'll open up to the screen. And so this is a common way that people will enter the application. And these four buttons plus the algorithms that we put behind the slider bars will help triage you into essentially the next section of the app, which would be the most relevant for you based on your responses. The other way to get into the app is if you're entering without going through the daily check-in. And so one of the key features is that I want to make it real easy for people to indicate that they need help. And so there's going to be some kind of a help button here, and then some other options of kind of things that they want to do. And so based on user feedback, we'll really kind of decide what these buttons are going to be, what are the things that people want to do most frequently. These will probably be redundant with the sections at the bottom. And here, if you press the More button, the screen kind of slides over and you can see the rest of the areas that are available within the app. And so you can swipe or you can press the More button to get there. So let's talk a little bit about trigger management. Trigger management is really important because a trigger is something that can cause a relapse, and so you want to be aware of what they are and you want to have kind of contingency plans for them. And so here is where somebody might be having an immediate issue with a trigger, where they could say, we could ask them what trigger is bothering you, and they can choose from either ones that they've already entered, or they can say enter a new trigger. And so they have some entered here. And there are some generalizations to what trigger people, especially for alcoholism, and so we can pre-stock some of these triggers and then allow for people to enter completely new ones if none of those apply to them. And so they could also delete these so that they have a real customized list. One of the things that we want to allow them to do once they kind of address what trigger is giving them a hard time, to take a look at the different strategies for that trigger, and like before, we can restock some of these, or you can also enter your own custom strategies. So some of your triggers might, you might have your own tips and tricks already for what you want to do when you run across a trigger. It's just nice to have it ready to go and ready to look back on when you can. And again, we'll pre-stock this with a few strategies for the different triggers, and some of them are kind of standard strategies. One of them is this kind of take 15 idea, where the common thought is that if you can get through the first 15 minutes of having a craving after being triggered, then you're in the clear to a certain extent. And so this little counter is just something where you can start the timer going and just kind of give yourself a little break for 15 minutes to get yourself through the next 15 minutes, basically. And so you could restart this, and you could use it in a variety of ways, to go outside and take a walk for 15 minutes or whatnot. But it's essentially a pretty well documented technique to distract you from your craving, and it does work for some people sometimes. So it's one of the tools that we wanted to put in here. Obviously, another powerful tool is being able to talk to someone on the phone. And so we'll have it immediately hook up to their contacts list, so that they can have these numbers entered in kind of when you set up the program, and then always have the option to enter new contact information as that changes. And so in addition to kind of those two examples, there is a variety of different things that you can do to manage triggers, and one of those is kind of this idea of exploring your thoughts. And so in exploring your thoughts, sometimes you might have a thought that's really bothering you, and so in addiction, sometimes thoughts really keep going around and around in your mind, and so being able to kind of get them down somewhere will help dispel that. And so here's a way that you can kind of enter a thought that's bothering you. You can enter a new thought, or you can always just check one off if you've had the thought recurring before. There's a couple of things that we can do with thoughts. One of them is we can measure essentially how accurate you think that thought is. And usually you do that by weighing how you think other people would react to that thought. Another way you can rank it or rate it is how self-compassionate is that thought. And so depending on how you slide those bars, we could do different interventions based on if you need an intervention to make your thought more self-compassionate, or make your thought more kind or less shameful. And then also cognitive behavioral therapy is a very standard technique for what you say, normalizing thoughts that are kind of way out there or inaccurate thoughts. And in fact, that's in a couple of the apps that I'm working on with the VA, and this cognitive behavioral therapy is probably the most standard talk therapy, most researched and pretty well accepted. So that's nothing out of the ordinary, but also important to have. And finally, we're not going to be able to cover everything, but in relapse management, I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because if you remember when we go back to kind of this launch page, if you were to have had a relapse, or whatever kind of language you want to use for that, and say you're coming back, getting back on track, one of the things that I found to be particularly problematic with kind of the scoring system that's used in programs, oftentimes they use what's called a chip system. And so as you get sober, you get a chip for being sober 24 hours, and then you get one at the end of a week, and 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then 1 month, a 2 month, and so on. But if you have any kind of relapse, you're expected to go back to a 24-hour chip. And so everything that I know about game design and keeping people engaged in things long periods of time says that that's a terrible thing to do to people. It's a punishing action. And so in part of what's exciting about InnerAlly is that we're using a scoring system where if you get off track and you get back on track, you really have a chance to make a lot of points based on how you analyze yourself in that particular relapse. And we'll likely not use the language relapse, but just for simplicity's sake here. So it gives you a message that, welcome back, and that, it's good that you're back, because the more that you participate with the app, really the more chance that you have of staying on track and living the life that you want. And it says, let's score some points. And so that gives you 4 things that you can do right here straight away to score points, based on you coming back into the app. And so one of the things is you can examine the triggers that led up to your relapse. And so you could check off the ones that you had a problem with, or you could enter a new trigger. And then also to rank the strength of the trigger in terms of how much of a problem it was for you in that particular relapse. One of the things that we can do with this information is then we could feed back some risk factors to people. So, if they do check in and say that they're struggling but still on track, we can say, hey, like, watch out for these things. Make sure you got your contingency plan in place, and so forth. Just use a little logic based on the tracking data that they're entering. One of the things that you want to do then is to re-look at those strategies that you have for those triggers, or if it's new, when you probably want to enter new strategies to make sure that you've kind of got that covered. A couple things that you can do to essentially score yourself some more points. You can do some self-compassion exercises, which is self-compassion. Raising your self-compassion is linked to lowered depression and lowered anxiety, which is really important to keep people sober, because those are both massive triggers. You could also make a list of your accomplishments, which is kind of interesting, because one of the things that people tend to overlook is, before you had that relapse, what were some of the really cool things that were happening to you? What did you accomplish things? Like, did you get, here I said get a raise, or I wrote part of my book. And so oftentimes really good things will precede a stretch of relapse. And so it's important to remind the person that those things are in store for them again as they're getting back on track. And then here again is the different ways you can practice self-compassion. And each of these, there's a little exercise kind of underlying these, which helps you to raise your level of self-compassion. And these techniques are actually based on Dr. Kristen Neff's research, and she studied self-compassion for about 10 years. And her workshops, she's done the research to show that she actually can raise self-compassion with her workshops. And so these are kind of like mini versions of some of the things that she teaches in her workshops. And so basically, I'm excited about this because we can really help people both like on a daily basis, checking in and making sure we're triaging them into the right kind of exercises and things that they need, and then also to have this way of entering the program where if you need some immediate help, and you can get it immediately, essentially, based on what's going to be most salient to you and our beta users. So that's just a little overview of InnerAlly. Part of what I didn't talk about is the social component of this, and we're hoping to do that for after we get the kind of base application done. And one of the key things that I see in that is this kind of Get Support, which is a peer-to-peer chatting system. I think that's going to be really important because it'll allow people to kind of get a hold of somebody else who's in the same program, running the same app, and have a little text chat with them as a way of peer-to-peer support. And of course can talk about that more later. But that's probably good for now.